Hello, how are you all today? Welcome back to Rosset Bespoke Butler's YouTube channel. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about being an MC. I've been asked to Master of Ceremonies for a lot of events over the years. Some of them have been particularly nerve-wracking. Ones that spring to mind are RADA, the RSC, and even the Guild of Toastmasters. So I have emceed for all of those people, and I'm glad to say the feedback was good. I was especially worried about the Royal Shakespeare Company, because if you can't project your voice in front of them, I'm pretty sure you'd be a laughingstock. But I got some nice compliments about it, so that I was very happy with. Now, first, some technical stuff. You may well need to use a microphone. If you're talking about an auditorium of 200, 300 people, doesn't matter how good you are at projecting, you're very unlikely to be able to pull it off without a microphone. Maybe if you're in a cathedral or something like that with incredible acoustics and you can really bellow it out, maybe you can. But normally not. If I can get away without using a microphone, I always do. I have a very strong voice. I have no trouble projecting to the back of a room that's, up to sort of 50 people or something, no problem at all. Because microphones are awkward, especially if you're not used to them. There's various different forms of microphone. My personal preference would be a little lapel mic that clips on here, or one that's static on the front of the stage. But these really need to be set up by a professional to get the level correct. Obviously, other than that, you have the standard sort of mic that you hold like this. But whatever you do not want to hold it like this, because every time you breathe, you hear this. It's very awkward. If the only way they can hear you is if you've got it right up like an ice cream cone, then the levels are wrong. You need to see if someone can adjust the levels and it's not sensitive enough. The other thing would be holding it too far away, and the problem there is obvious. They won't hear you, which is a really big problem. Now, the only way to get this right is to be able to fully test and set up the system before you start. This is often very difficult to do, because what happens is people are setting up the room, they might be laying the tables, they're doing all these things, and it leaves you with very little time to test the system. But if you're using one, you need to make that time. I can tell you from personal bitter experience, there is nothing worse than going into a room, start talking, and then someone at the back shout, "Speak up!" You don't want that to happen. So make sure it's all set up in advance. It will be slightly different if you're lucky enough to have an expert in the room adjusting the levels as you go. Then you're golden. They are going to make you sound good. Unfortunately, unless you're speaking to a really big room, you don't usually get that luxury. So, moving on from that technical side, let's talk about the words. Let's talk about what you're going to say. It's all very well and good to write yourself out a speech verbatim. Like a play. I say this, pause for laughter, then I say this, etc., etc., etc. Now, that can work. If that's how your mind works, then that can work. But the problem is, you don't adjust for your audience. You're writing this at home, and you're thinking to yourself what the look of your audience is going to be when you're delivering it. Then if you feel like you're putting some very pertinent point across or telling some hilarious anecdote and there's no reaction, that is going to really put you off. But it might just be that you're not putting it in at the right moment for your audience. So personally, I never write out the whole speech in that way. I think it's counterproductive. I don't think it helps you. What I do is write down simple bullet points and then I learn them. I may well have them written down in front of me on the lectern or whatever, just in case, just as more of a crutch, just in case I need it. But I won't really use it. I've just got little bullet points in my head about what I'm going to say. You often get told this very helpful advice of start with a joke. Don't. Never start with a joke. No one's ready for a joke right at the beginning because they're just getting to know you. They're probably still fidgeting around or doing whatever. They maybe not quite finished speaking to some, or they're still thinking about what the last speaker said if you're one of a group of speakers. So you want to start with an introduction or probably a thank you. So, thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely introduction that you just gave. If someone's just passed it across, or it's beautiful to be here in this wonderful blah, blah, blah. That's the bit. No one's really going to remember those first few words. They're just a sort of a foot in the door. Then you can say who you are and ease your way into it. I mean, jokes are fine. Well, they're not. I don't tell jokes. If you want to be a stand-up comedian, then be a stand-up comedian. But that's not the same as being a Master of Ceremonies. You can be witty, you can be funny, but don't just tell, rehearsed jokes that you've downloaded off the internet. It never really... Well, it doesn't never work, but it rarely works. Even if you think about the best comedians, or at least ones that I think of as being the best comedians, they don't generally tell jokes. They deliver stories. And that is what you need to do as an MC. One of my favourite comedians of all time is Billy Connolly. And he never tells a joke. You watch his stand-up shows, and you'll see he never just tells a straight joke. It's not like a beginning, a middle, and an end. Straight, just... never a one-liner. It's always a story. It's always, I was taking the plane from so-and-so and that reminds me this happened, that happened. And it draws you into the narrative. It really just pulls you in. It pulls your interest. You see people physically moving forwards in their seat to hear what they're saying. A one-liner is the opposite. If you're just standing and go like, a fish swam into a wall, said, damn. It might get a smile, probably a fake smile, to be fair, but it's not really going to engage your audience. So you need to think about that, especially at things like if you're emceeing a wedding or something like that. You're not supposed to be the centre of attention. You are a facilitator. So next thing is think of your cues. Remember what you need to do. Who are you introducing? That's the most important thing. Who are you introducing and why? Are you introducing a dinner, a guest? Are you at a wedding? So you're going through the speeches and bringing the bride and groom in. And all of these are going to have a slightly different tone to what you're doing. If it's a wedding, it's got to be upbeat. It's got to be exciting. You really got to add a lot of enthusiasm into what you're saying. If it's an academic conference, then maybe you've got to be a little bit more sensible. You've got to be a little bit more low-key. It's horses for courses. You've got to do the right thing in the right situation. You can't just have a set song sheet that you read off the same every time. It doesn't work. Don't try, another tip is don't try to pretend to be something you're not. I remember I went to an event with the worst speaker I have ever heard. And the reason he was so bad was because he was completely self-obsessed trying to build up his own part. He put on a very ridiculous voice that you could tell was not his genuine voice. And then he said some very strange things. He was talking about the weather, for example. And he said, "Oh, someone's blowing a hooligan outside." Now, of course, that's not the expression. The expression is, it's blowing a hoolie. Someone blowing a hooligan is something very different. If you know, I don't want to get into that, but I'm sure you appreciate that's something very different. So think about who you are, and if you've been chosen to MC an event, that's probably because they like you. And there's no need to pretend to be someone else. Another thing is your delivery. Silence is your friend. Don't feel like you have to rattle through the words as quick as you can. It's just not necessary. You'd be amazed how long you can keep people interested with total silence. Just with a... It's surprising that they'll just sort of come into you. You know, you can lower your voice. You can leave more gaps between your words. And it won't push them away. It will draw them in. They will listen more attentively. So you can change the pitch and the register of your voice to make a point, to get attention, to draw them in, and then to get them to listen. Don't speak in a monotone. Don't just speak the words like this at the same time, blah, 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 staccato. No, it's blah, 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 like that. Okay? Then you've got to look at the sort of words you say. You don't want to make sure you don't offend anyone. Make sure that, you might have heard something that you thought was hilarious. But think about your audience. Are they going to think it's hilarious? Keep it appropriate. If any of you are best men watching this and you've been asked to MC at your best friend's wedding, which I'm guessing maybe a few of the people watching this might be, keep it appropriate. You can, in your speech, you can tell hilarious stories about the groom, as I'm sure you will. But the rest of the time, keep it appropriate. Remember who else is there. So they're my top tips really for, I'll keep it pretty simple for you, just for sort of emceeing at an event. Keep it simple, keep it honest, check all your equipment, and have a plan, a basic plan of what you're going to do, who you're introducing. Get their names right. That's very important, to get their names right. Some names are very difficult. There's nothing wrong with asking someone in advance just to say their name to you, so you know what it is and you're not going to embarrass them by total mispronunciation of their name. So thank you very much. I hope that's been useful to you. I'll probably speak again a bit more at a later sort of event with you about the practicalities of projecting your voice, because that's a different sort of lesson, and we'll do that one on another day. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been useful for you, and I'll see you again soon. Make sure that you subscribe to watch the other videos that are coming up. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.